Hey everyone, it's Danielle Taylor with Keller Williams Realty here on the beautiful Outer Banks. And today is Stats Day.
Stats Day, 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 Stats Day.
As always, all of this data is courtesy of the Outer Banks Association of Realtors through May 31st, 2026. And if you're new to Stats Day, the numbers that we look at are for single-family residential homes throughout all of Dare County and all of Corolla, including the four-wheel drive. And this month, there is one major takeaway that really jumps out at me. The Outer Banks market isn't seeing major price declines in 2026. What we're seeing is a shift toward more realistic pricing. Sellers are asking less, buyers are negotiating more, and actual sold prices have remained remarkably stable. First, let's talk about sales activity. Year-to-date, unit sales are down about 3% compared to 2025. But before anybody panics, let's add some context to that. Sales in May were actually up almost 9% compared to May of last year and up nearly 11% compared to April. That's really important because it tells us that buyers are still active. They're still purchasing homes. They're just being more selective about what they're willing to pay and which properties they're willing to pursue. Now let's take a look at inventory. That's our next thing. New listings year to date are up about 2% compared to last year, but May listing activity was essentially flat to May of 2025 and actually down compared to April. So overall inventory sits at about 5.8 months of supply, which is almost identical to where we were last year and puts us continuing to be in a stable market. So inventory is not flooding the market. We're not seeing a huge oversupply of homes, but here's the number that really caught my attention. Nearly 28% of the homes listed in May are already under contract or sold. And those properties averaged just 9 days on market. Only 9. That tells us something really important. There is buyer demand. Buyers are watching, and when the right property comes to the market at the right price, they're going to move quickly. Now let's talk about pricing. Active list price has actually dropped significantly. The median active list price is down about 6.4% or $53,000 from year to date last year. This tells me a greater number of sellers are entering the market in 2026, pricing more aggressively right from the start. It also indicates to me that possibly the mix of inventory has shifted towards some more affordable properties. Either way, sellers appear to be acknowledging that buyers are more price sensitive than they were last year. Yet, here's the kicker: home values haven't fallen. This is the part that many of my clients are missing. While asking prices have fallen, median sold price year to date has actually increased from $705,000 last year to $710,000 this year. The median sold to list price actually increased from $712,527 to $729,500. In other words, the homes that are actually selling are still selling at a very similar price to last year. This is not the picture of a declining market. It's the picture of a market that's finding its equilibrium. And one thing that jumps out at me is the median list price for active listings is currently sitting at $769,000. The median list price for our sold inventory is sitting at $729,500. That's only a 5% spread. Last year at this time, we had a 15% spread in that number. So what are we taking away from this? Buyers are still willing to pay, and sellers who price correctly are finding success. The market is doing a much better job separating realistic listings from aspirational listings. So for my sellers, here's what it means. I say it all the time, pricing strategy matters more than ever. The data absolutely does not support a let's just throw it on the market and see what happens. What it does support is strategic pricing, strong presentation, and understanding what the competing inventory is. The market is still paying excellent prices for desirable homes, but it's no longer rewarding unrealistic pricing. So for my buyers, what does this mean? The message is really encouraging. The Outer Banks market has not experienced a dramatic correction. So if you're waiting for that, it's not happening. However, the inventory has improved in the sense that seller expectations have in some cases softened. There are more negotiation opportunities that exist, and buyers have more control over the process than they've had in several years. One of the most valuable statistics, I think, in this report is our price reductions. And this is where we have to focus. About 35% of the sold properties indicated they did at least one price reduction before selling. But look what happened afterward. The median sold price for homes that reduced their price was $670,000. For homes that did not do a price reduction, $735,000. That's a difference of roughly $65,000 or almost 10%. And that's before we even talk about the additional carrying costs, insurance, utilities, maintenance, mortgage, payments, all the things, and the lost marketing momentum that comes from an extended time on market. So the lesson here is simple. The market is much more forgiving of a seller who prices correctly on day one than a seller who chases the market down with multiple price reductions. And here's another really interesting number. For homes that eventually went under contract after a price reduction, the median time it took to do that was about 27 days. 27 days. So what that's telling us is that a price reduction isn't necessarily a magic bullet or a magic wand. Sometimes it still takes a bit of time for the market to respond. So let's finish up this stats day with days on market. For sold properties, the average days on market actually dropped from 75 last year to 66 this year, and the median dropped from 41 last year to 34 this year. That's a really positive sign. The homes that are selling fast or faster. Meanwhile, active listings are sitting at an average of about 101 days on market and a median of 71. Again, two very different markets, one for properties that are priced appropriately and one for properties that aren't. So what should buyers and sellers take away from all of this data that I've just thrown at you? For buyers, you have more negotiating power than you have had in the last few years, especially on properties that have been sitting for a while. But don't mistake that for a slow market. The good homes are still attracting attention and moving quickly. For my sellers, buyers are still here. This is great news. Demand still exists, but pricing strategy matters more today than it has in several years. The data continues to show that getting ahead of the market is usually far more profitable than trying to play catch up later. So as always, every property here on the Outer Banks, every location, every town is slightly different. So if you want to talk specifics about a home, a neighborhood, please reach out. We would love to help. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future updates. And if you're not getting our newsletter, please drop us a line and we'll make sure we get you added. Because remember, there's no better living than Sandbar living. Have a great week.